Welcome, everybody, to the College Football Weekly Pick'em Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The College Football Weekly Pick'em Show is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host. First up, Brian Schmidt.
What's up, everybody? Doing well tonight. Doing my dancing. Ready to go.
All right, and of course, from the University of Alabama, who will be back in the college playoffs this year, former offensive lineman Bill Searcy.
Hey, guys, it's a good time to be a Tide fan.
Yeah, whatever. Especially living with all those Auburn fans who are butthurt now.
Yes, that's the best part.
I would like to address one thing here before we get to the four. And that was last week. We had a guy by the name of Aaron Zepnick. He's a Wisconsin Badger fan on the show. And Aaron made some claims, said the game was going to be fixed so Wisconsin wins, which I still don't have a clue what the hell he was talking about, Bill. But in typical Wisconsin fashion, he, of course, has refused to come back on the show tonight because he thinks that everything was rigged against Wisconsin. They didn't have a fair chance. And, I mean, this is the thing. Last night at halftime, I asked him if he was going to be on the show. And he said he doesn't know because the Badgers have their heads up their asses and can't tackle. He said they don't have the speed to match up with Ohio State. He said, I will admit it, they aren't as good as I thought. Much different than I expected. Today, he was complaining to me that they should still be in the Final Four because they have the best defense in the country. And I would like to say this. I got multiple emails from people asking me where the hell we got that guy and who he was. And, I mean, he's a Wisconsin Badger fan that's experienced with football as coaching semi-pro and being a low-level high school football assistant coach. And last year he was on this show for most of the year, and the same exact thing happened. And he got butt hurt, and he hightailed it home. So he was he was the one that wanted to be on the show. Matt Anderscavage from our NFL show basically had brought it up to him. He said he wanted to be on so he could defend his Badgers. He defended his Badgers last week, and he did it so incoherently, I was almost embarrassed for him. But I thought, hey, you know, maybe Wisconsin's going to win the game. And the sad thing is this. I didn't think they would, and I picked him just so he wouldn't be a little crybaby and hang up. And I thought maybe he would come back to defend the indefensible, which is Wisconsin or Ohio State being in the Final Four. Now, the thing about Wisconsin Badger fans and Green Bay Packer fans is they are entitled. They think that no matter what happens, they belong in a championship. I blame this all on Vince Lombardi. Because let's face it, if there's no Vince Lombardi, the Green Bay Packers have moved to Jacksonville or Birmingham by 1963. All right? The Wisconsin Badgers every year play in the Big Ten West, which is akin to Conference USA. There's no teams there. Every year, or the last 2 or 3 years, they've been in position where all they had to do was back up what they say and win their conference championship game. And they don't do that. And they never will because they're the Wisconsin Badgers. If you look at the roster, everybody pretty much on the roster is from the upper Midwest. All right? They don't have a quarterback. They never do. The one time they did, they got him from NC State for a year. They didn't do anything with him. But they are too slow. They got a bunch of big, strong, corn-fed guys that can't keep up with Southern football players. They can't even get people from Ohio. So if the Wisconsin Badgers ever want to be taken seriously, maybe they shouldn't just go after the Wisconsin and Minnesota kids because let's face it, Wisconsin high school football is a joke. It's kind of, if you put them in Ohio, it's about like junior high football. So for Aaron Zepnick, throw a set of balls. Now, let's get to the issue of the final four teams. We've got
– oh, God.
I don't think anybody can debate outside of Wisconsin that three of these teams definitely deserve to be in. All right, and that's Oklahoma, Clemson, who both looked awesome yesterday, especially Oklahoma when you consider who they're playing. And, of course, Georgia, who completely dominated the Auburn Tigers. Now, the fourth team that got in was the Alabama Crimson Tide. It was between Alabama and Ohio State, I guess. And the beautiful thing was the way ESPN, all of a sudden today, after not bringing this up all week, all of a sudden threw USC in the mix too. Hell, the USC people didn't even understand why they did that, since they lost 49-14 to Notre Dame, who's not very damn good. But when you look at this, are you all right with Alabama getting in over Ohio State, Brian?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If Ohio State would have blown out Wisconsin, now I think you can start having more of a conversation. But the fact is they didn't look very good against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin, as you said, they couldn't get out of their own way if they wanted to. Now you couple that with the loss to Iowa, the loss to Oklahoma, there's just not enough there to justify putting Ohio State in. And again, we've talked about it. It's got to be, there's a few teams that have got to be put in there that they're going to bend over backwards to put in. Alabama's one of them. And this sets up the marquee matchup for them, which is going to be Clemson against Alabama, Part 3. So I think under the circumstances, I think it's the right field. Again, the difference between what's best for business and what really could happen, because you can talk about UCF and things like that. Do they deserve to be there? Yes. Is it what's best for business? No.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing. I don't think it's necessarily what's best for ratings and stuff like that. I think it is what's best for the conferences, because when you look at this, I think if you put a UCF in this, I don't think that's going to hurt ratings. You got a Cinderella story. It might make it even better. If you look, the highest rated Super Bowl to this day is Super Bowl 16 between the Bengals and 49ers, which were two teams that came out of nowhere and were basically two Cinderellas. So I think this is more about keeping the bowls and the conferences happy.
Well, here's my thing, and I thought about something a little bit different. Is when back in 1984 when BYU won the national championship, different time where the Cinderellas mattered. Everybody would get excited about it. Now, in college football, yes, we would be excited about the Cinderellas, but the sponsors, ticket holders, not so much. The money's not going to be there. It all comes down to the money. Now, I will say this, which is a whole other subject for another day. Expand the playoffs. Now you get those Cinderellas that you can put in there. Now it's a little different situation.
Yeah, plus you get a little bit more of a backstory if you got 16, and you got Central Florida in the round of 16 beating Auburn, and then step it up and maybe beating Clemson, and then all of a sudden you got a big story. Now, Bill, I know you've got no problem with Bama getting in.
No, I don't have a problem, but I'll say this. I will say this to you. If I think the committee obviously had things set just like they wanted it, so that they could either justify putting Alabama in or Ohio State. And if Ohio State, like Brian just said, if Ohio State would have had a big blowout last night, I'm convinced, even though they had two losses, even though they had a big blowout loss to Iowa, I'm convinced that they would have put Ohio State in, because I think they felt okay about either Alabama or Ohio State being in the Final Four. However, I said last week to our Wisconsin buddy that, winning, is not winning once or twice or 1 year or 2 years, but winning a lot cures a lot of things. And so they're always going to want an Alabama or Ohio State or now Clemson in that Final Four, and are going to do whatever is necessary within reason to get one of those teams like that in. They know the TV ratings are going to blast out of the roof. They know that the ticket sales are going to be crazy. People are going to support it. And it's going to now, like you said, it just fell into place where Alabama's playing Clemson in the playoff. It'll be bizarre. Now, I said all year, I don't know if I've ever said it on this show, but Alabama, I saw them play Florida State the first game of the year. Florida State didn't turn out to be the team that we all thought they were going to be, but I think a lot of that had to do with their starting quarterback getting hurt the first game.
Yeah.
So the Florida State win didn't turn out to be as important to Alabama as we all thought it would be. However, I had said from game one that I did not think Alabama was the number one team in the country. I still don't think they're the number one team in the country. If they have the next two wins, then they'll deserve that. But the teams that we beat, the strength of schedule, having that loss at Auburn, we had one loss in the year. That's why we're in, and we've won a lot in the last 10 years, and so they want to see Alabama take another shot at it, and nothing bad can happen even if Alabama loses for the committee. So Alabama's a safe pick for them. Ohio State would have probably been okay too, just not maybe quite as safe because they had two losses. But we'll see. I had mixed feelings yesterday going into the day. I was with some former teammates, and we all kind of felt the same way. Was that we want to see them get in the playoffs, but do we really want to see them get in the playoffs? Because hopefully we're going to have most of our injuries back, most of our injured guys back by January 1. I think that's going to make a huge difference in what we see on the field.
Yeah.
But hey, we got 4 big games coming up, and Alabama's got a huge rematch against Clemson coming up. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see what's going to happen, man.
Yeah, and I think overall the best game yesterday, and I think we kind of predicted it last week, was Memphis and Central Florida, Brian. And the thing that bothered me about that game is I'm sitting there, I'm watching this great game, and all of a sudden they come on with 5 or 6 minutes left, of course, on ABC to say that ESPN's reporting that Central Florida's coach Scott Frost is leaving. And I just don't understand why the NCAA doesn't move their signing date back to the middle of January, the end of January, the early signing date, and make these coaches honor their commitment to these kids that play football for them.
Well, until they do that, this is the kind of thing you're going to see. And then the problem with that whole situation when that happened is I don't know about you, but I know watching it took away from the game, and that was a great game. That was an absolute great game, and it really kind of took away from the game because then that became the story, not the fact that you got this great game going on, which was it. That became the story. So that was very disappointing. I would love to see them do what the NFL does, and that is, have you can't sign, you can't do anything with the coaches until after the season. I would love to see that, but will we ever see it? I doubt it. I'll be surprised if it ever happens because, open market system, everybody's going to try to get theirs, but I'd love to see that done.
Yeah, but my problem is this, Bill. With an open market system, these guys still have contracts. If I'm the president of a university, why would I even let anybody talk to him?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right. And let me ask you a question. Is Scott Frost, has he announced, is he going to stay and coach their bowl game?
I think he is. I think he wants to.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen before where coaches have wanted to stay and the school just told them to go ahead. But I think he's staying. But then again, that kind of puts a black cloud over them playing Auburn. Everybody's going to talk about Scott Frost.
The last thing that I saw The last thing that I saw about 20 minutes before we got on was he was coaching the bowl game. That was the last thing I saw. That was about 20 minutes before we came on.
Yeah,
I'd like to see all of it. I'd like to see all this business, all the business moves and the business things wait till after a bowl game, until the season's over. And I just, like you said, and I didn't watch that game yesterday, but it does diminish. It diminishes from the game when that's all they can talk about is where he's going next and what kind of job he's going to do there. And, it just hurts the game.
Yeah, and in the end, they always say that these are student athletes and they're in it for the kids, but they're not. And if you're a kid and you want to leave, they're not going to let you go play immediately somewhere else. So why do we let coaches do it?
Well,
you're exactly right.
And this is the whole thing: is it's a billion dollar industry, and the money. Look at where the money is going. The NCAA, schools, conferences, coaches, and so the players are very much which should be the main focus, and they're not, because look at the coaching contracts, and I'm not talking just head coaching contracts. You've got coordinators at Power 5 schools that are making $5-6 million a year. You've got position coaches who are pushing, $800,000 to $1 million. There's a lot of money going, and let's get, Scott Frost is going to Nebraska. How many of his coaches are leaving Central Florida?
Yeah. How many of those kids are going to go with him?
Exactly. None.
Yeah, so this is the thing. The way it's set up, this is set up to just make it so there's only a certain amount of elite programs. Because if you're a small program, and you get good, the Cincinnati Bearcats with Brian Kelly is a perfect example. That guy's a complete scumbag, lies to the kids, tells them he's going to stay. They beat Pitt, go undefeated, they're ranked third. The next day, he shows up at a party, walks in and tells them he's going to Notre Dame and leaves. Those kids, and that was a hell of a team. They went down and played Florida, got beat 52-20, I think it was. And not that they would have beat Florida if they'd had Brian Kelly, but the game would not have been that one-sided. He basically destroyed those kids and destroyed a dream season for that team, and nobody cares. Brian Kelly does that. Nobody cares. There's people in Cincinnati still pissed. But overall, nobody cares. He stuck a kid on scaffold and basically killed the kid, and nobody remembers.
Well, if you remember back in that Cincinnati team, that was a team that the year that he left for Notre Dame, they had a lot of players coming back that next year. And, so it really comes down to a lot of these players, they come to these schools for the coaches. Well, then these coaches leave and here we are. If I'm a player, I have no recourse. I can transfer, but then I'm going to get restricted on where I can transfer. I'm going to have to sit out a year unless I'm a graduate, going into the that graduate deal that they do for seniors, or I can go Division I AA.
Yeah,
so,
it's a joke.
I heard today, now this might have been wrong, I heard today that Jimbo Fisher at Florida State I don't even know if he had a meeting with his players to tell them he was leaving. I think what I heard today was he did it by text or something of that nature. It's they can say what they want to say about. And I don't doubt that while the coaches at any particular college that he cares about his players, but when it comes to money and leaving, they won't hesitate to leave and leave you standing there holding a bag. And the kids need more freedom to move around. When the coach moves, they should be able to move too.
Yeah, if they do that,
they should be free.
Yeah, if they do that, I don't have a problem with it. Jarrett Stidham had to sit out a year.
Yeah.
And the stuff that happened at Baylor was absolutely sickening. Why are you going to punish that kid for what happened when he had nothing to do with it?
Right. Exactly.
It's just like if Nick Saban and I'm just using an example. But if Nick Saban would do something, get busted, and they would take away their bowl eligibility, he could leave, go coach Ole Miss the next year and play for the national championship while those kids are sitting back paying for what he did.
Not only that, but he can leave and make more money than what he's making.
Yeah,
and go coach somebody else and leave all the kids paying. That's why I've never understood making a current team of players pay for the sins of a past team when they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
I don't know, and I don't know what the answer is to the punishment of the team that did it, but it shouldn't be me playing today that's paying for what you did, 5 or 6 years ago. So,
well, I think if a team
it's a tough
did
situation.
I think if a team did something to get it, or if a school did something to get them put on probation, I think what they ought to do is just make them fire the AD, fire the head coach, and a 5-year suspension from college football.
Yeah.
I bet that would clean it up a little bit.
No, I think
it would clean it up a lot.
Yeah, but they're not going to do that. But they're not going to do it.
No, they're not going to do that.
I mean, with Louisville, the only reason Louisville got in trouble was because of the FBI investigation. If you look into what North Carolina did, they got a slap on the wrist. What they did was terrible also, but the FBI didn't look into it, so the NCAA can ignore it. Because let's face it, North Carolina and Roy Williams put butts in the seats. They put people watching games. They bring in a lot of money ad-wise, and I don't know. This is why when people tell me that they'd rather watch college football because the NFL is a horseshit league, which it is, I think when you compare it, I think what happens in the NCAA, probably if you knew everything that went on, would make the NFL look like a damn daycare center.
Well, that's because, because people always say that and I love college football for lots of reasons, but people say, well, I love college football because, it's not a business. It's it's dedication to your school and love for your school. And well, that as far as a player goes, that may be true. But as far as a coach goes, it's no different than NFL. They're coaching for money. They'll move in a heartbeat for money. There is no loyalty to school. There's no loyalty to players. So in that way, it is just like the NFL.
Yeah, there's probably less loyalty for the coaches in college than there are in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, and take it one step further. We talk about the North Carolina getting a slap on the wrist. The one thing that college football has always proven is the North Carolinas of the world are going to get a slap on the wrist unless there's an FBI investigation. But yet, be an Ole Miss, or I'm gonna go back several years, but be a University of Houston who they were good, and then if you remember back in 88, 89, they're throwing up all these points, winning all these games, and all of a sudden here it comes. If you're not one of the historically top teams, and all of a sudden you start having a lot of success, you get a target on you. And if you're not North Carolina, who has, and from a football standpoint, Ohio State would be a great example. Alabama would be a great example. They're always going to be above the law, so to speak. But now Ole Miss, Ole Miss started having success, and all of a sudden, here comes the target. So you see it all the time, and when to say that the NCAA has issues, absolutely. I mean, there are some things that go on that don't make any sense, but that's the way it's always been. It didn't just get like this. It's been this way for many, many, many years.
Yeah, it's been corrupt forever. It's not like, you had Sam Gilbert, the car dealer at UCLA, supplying John Wooden's players with cars, money. Everybody knew about it, but nobody said anything because UCLA was good for business in the 60s and 70s.
And, the other one I just thought of as you were saying that is that from a football standpoint, SMU back in the day, they were not a great program, and then all of a sudden they became this program, and the target came out. Well, yeah, they were cheating left, right, up the center, but they weren't doing anything different than a lot of these other schools were doing. The difference was they weren't supposed to be winning. They, all of a sudden they're winning games, and all of a sudden here it comes. And, they had the target on their back. They just, they didn't care. I mean, you ever watch that show? I mean, they didn't care. They were going to do whatever they had to do, and they were going to run it as far as they could. But, that will never happen in Ohio State, because Ohio State could cheat left, right, up the center. Alabama could cheat left, right, center. And it's going to take an act of Congress for them to ever get in any kind of trouble that SMU did.
Well, the perfect example is Kentucky basketball after Eddie Sutton in the late 80s, early 90s. They did ban them for the tournament, but it was just for 2 years, and they were right back to business. And the stuff Kentucky was doing, probably comparable to SMU, probably worse since it was Kentucky, but I'll leave that alone. All right, did you happen to look at any of the other bowl matches that they came out with today, Brian?
I did. Obviously the one that I know people really kind of jumped on was the Ohio State USC. It's kind of an old school matchup. I like the Miami Wisconsin game. I like in the fact that it's going to piss Wisconsin people off, but I don't know if that's going to be a great game, but I like that. You
like the game, or you like the fact that it's going to piss Wisconsin fans off?
It's going to piss Wisconsin fans off. I'm pretty happy with that.
Well,
so.
I've already seen them complaining because they have to go play Miami in the Orange Bowl. But where are you going to play the Orange Bowl then? I mean, you ain't growing oranges in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Right.
See, there goes that what our buddy told us last week, that Wisconsin always has to go south to play, and they're at a disadvantage.
Well, you know what? Until they get 80-degree weather in Green Bay or Madison or whatever godforsaken city in Wisconsin there is, that's just the way it is. I mean, I'm sorry. I've never heard that many Ohio State fans bitch in the 70s and 80s because they had to go west and play the Rose Bowl. Because if I remember right, Brian, when I used to watch those games as a wee little boy, the crowds were pretty much split 50-50, and I don't think there is a kid in the world that is playing in Columbus, Ohio, that minds going for 2 weeks to California in 85-degree weather.
No, and you're going to the Rose Bowl. I mean, that's the whole thing. You play in a bowl game. You play to win a Big Ten championship back then to go to the Rose Bowl because we're going to California. It was a big deal. And how many Ohio State USC matchups did you see in a Rose Bowl?
A ton. And you know what? In the end, the reason Ohio State lost is because USC was usually just better.
Yeah. And so it is what it is. But I like that matchup. There's some I was trying to look at some of the bowl matchups. The UCF game I think is going to be interesting. And I was wanting to look at some of the smaller games as well, but I haven't had a chance to look at all yet. But there's some really good games. I mean, the bowl season's always pretty good. You're going to have your clunkers. You're going to have your I don't care to watch games, but you're always going to have some good matchups. And I think there are, again this year going to be some decent matchups.
All right. And in the end, if you're a Wisconsin fan and you don't want to go to the Orange Bowl, beat Ohio State. We're going to take a quick break and catch a word from our sponsor, MyBookie.ag.
Hey everyone, my name is Alex Golden. I am the host of the Courtroom Podcast, an NBA debate show here at The Grueling Truth. And I'm here with one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has partnered with MyBookie.ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And that's why The Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now, and mybookie.ag will give you a 50% bonus on first deposit for up to $3,000 in extra playing money. Just enter promo code TGT50. That's TGT50 to take advantage of this offer. Visit mybookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth Network, and enjoy winning today. mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
Welcome back, everybody, to the College Football Weekly Pick'em Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Of course, we are brought to you by mybookie.ag, so make sure when you want to bet for all the bowl games, click on thegruelingtruth.net. Click the banner to take you to mybookie.ag, and they'll take care of you. When you win, you get paid in less than 48 hours, which is more than you can save for almost any other sports book. So make sure you check them out at mybookie.ag. All right, guys, is there any doubt right now that Baker Mayfield wins the Heisman Trophy? Bill?
I don't think so. I don't know why there would be, or I don't know who else could slide in there ahead of him at this point. The guy's played phenomenal all year. He wins when he has to win. He comes through on the big plays. He's really comfortable on the big stage, So I don't think there's anybody who can compete with him right now.
All right, Brian, my number 2 would be Bryce Love from Stanford, but he would be a distant number 2.
Yeah, the only way Mayfield's not winning this is if the day of the Heisman Trophy announcement he picks up the Heisman Trophy and throws it at somebody. So,
but he's still winning, shouldn't he? Because they're not going to let him touch it until they announce he won it.
Hey, the way he does things, he just may go upstairs and grab it. So, but I know he's clearing away the guy that's going to win it. In his showing yesterday and in the championship game was, if you had doubts, which I don't know how anybody could have had doubts, but if you had doubts, his performance yesterday should have erased all those doubts.
Now, Brian, do you think he would make a good NFL quarterback?
I think in the right system he can. He can make all the throws. He's a very smart quarterback.
Quick release, too.
Great release. I think he can absolutely be a good pro quarterback. I think it's just going to be a matter of being in the right system. I mean, if he goes to the Cleveland Browns, no.
Well, that's anybody if they go to the Cleveland Browns, though, Brian.
I know, but I mean, that's the reality of it. Is you can't put him in a place like Cleveland. He'll fail. I mean, everybody's going to fail going to Cleveland, but I mean, that's not where you want to be.
No, that's not where anybody wants to be. All right, so we're not going to pick the final 4 games because we're going to keep doing shows over the next few weeks so we can keep people listening. But when you look at these 2 matchups, Brian, which matchup to you is the most intriguing?
Everybody's gonna pick Clemson and Alabama for really good reasons. I mean, it's part 3 of the rubber match, so to speak. But I really like the Oklahoma Georgia. I think you've got 2 really good teams. You've got a great offense with Oklahoma. Georgia as well can put up some points. I think that game really has the possibilities to be a great game.
All right, Bill.
Actually, for obvious reasons, I get excited about Clemson, Alabama, but I think people are going to be probably more excited about Oklahoma, Georgia, because Alabama, Clemson. This is the 3rd go around with those 2 teams playing each other. It's the 3rd in the trilogy, I guess. But Oklahoma, Georgia, I think is going to be an interesting game because I think Georgia's defense and the speed they have on defense is going to neutralize some of what Oklahoma does. And although Oklahoma's got a great team, I can't say they don't. I think that I don't think Oklahoma's going to go in and just blow Georgia away like Auburn did the first go around. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. I'm looking forward to seeing the Oklahoma-Georgia game.
Yeah, because the thing to me, the reason Auburn blew Georgia out the first time is because they completely dominated the ball, dominated the game at the line of scrimmage. They were a lot more physical than Georgia. And I
Yep.
think Georgia had kind of skated through the season, dominating everybody, and I don't think they were ready for somebody to come out and smack them in the mouth. And I think that's just what
Right.
happened in that game.
And they turned, but Georgia turned around, which showed us yesterday they're capable. They turned right around and did the same thing to Auburn yesterday, and they were a totally different Georgia team. And Kirby Smart, I think Kirby Smart's a great coach, and he'll be ready for Oklahoma. But you got two very good teams playing. But I have a lot of confidence Georgia's going to win that game. I know
Hey,
we're
don't
not
pick
picking
that game yet.
and
Come on. You might change
I
your
may
mind.
change my mind.
Yeah, see?
But I'll probably change my mind. But I think it's going to be a good game, man. I really do.
Yeah, I think both games are going to be really good. The Oklahoma-Georgia strikes me just because of the contrast in styles, the offense against the defense. Clemson, Alabama worries me because they come into this game kind of like Ohio State did against Clemson last year. And I think people really underrate how good Kelly Bryant, the quarterback at Clemson, is. That's because he got hurt in the Syracuse game, and then he played hurt for most of the rest of the year. He's been healthy the last couple weeks, and I think Kelly Bryant is a big difference there. And I think the key for Alabama to win, though, is Jalen Hurts to be able to throw the ball successfully.
Yeah, he's got to. He is going to be the key on our offense. Our defense and Clemson's defense is excellent. I mean,
they're the best. Hey, outside of the Wisconsin Badgers, they're the best defense in the country.
That's right. That's how Auburn beat up on Alabama, was they controlled the line of scrimmage. And so if Clemson can do the same to Alabama, then it's going to be a long night. And Alabama, hopefully we got a lot of time now. Hopefully we're going to get most of our injured players back. I think that'll make a huge difference also. But Alabama still, even at that, has a lot of speed on defense. I think they can play with Clemson's offense. I know that Clemson's quarterback is good, but he's not Deshaun Watson either. So I think it's going to be an excellent game.
Yeah, but I do think Clemson's defense is even better this year than what it was last year.
I agree with that.
So I think we have two interesting matchups, and of course, in a week or so, we get to start picking games that have teams like Georgia State in it. Bill, I know you're excited about that. You've seen a lot of Georgia State football.
So fired. I'm so fired up about that. Yeah, that's great. I tell you, but Brian just mentioned it a minute ago. The Central Florida Bowl game is going to be interesting.
Yeah,
I am looking forward to that one.
This is a way, Brian, for the NCAA to really look bad. If Central Florida was to come out and thump Auburn, that would have to give some people some question about what the hell's going on here.
Oh, absolutely it does. And that's really where all this needs to go. I mean, we've talked about it before. I mean, an 18 playoff, 16-team playoff, but eventually it's got to go there. But the thing is, the UCFs of the world, the Wisconsins, those teams, if you want to get into the show, I mean, they're not going to just put you in. You got to kick the door down and give them no choice. And UCF to beat Auburn would absolutely now, maybe next year, maybe now that makes it for that next non-Power 5 school that goes 12-0, 13-0. Maybe now that gives them a little extra, but you're not gonna kick that door down until you win games. And this is a great opportunity for UCF. Not for a school, it's great they win a bowl game, but for the whole system as a whole to start maybe making changes, that these teams need to go there, need to be involved in it.
Yeah, and I think in the end, if you're a Wisconsin fan, you need to go south. You need to go to Florida, even Ohio, Pennsylvania, get some football players. They have good players. They have a good team. But you cannot be an elite program if you can't get over the hump. They've been given multiple opportunities and failed almost every time. Like I said last week, I compared them to like the Cincinnati Bengals. They can get to the point where you think they're really good, but every time they do, they lose.
Well, think about this, and that is, and I'll use UCF as an example. Where are most of the UCF kids coming from? They're coming from Florida, Ohio State, where Ohio State's getting the best players in Ohio, and they're getting, Florida, California, Alabama the same way, Georgia's got great high school football. You're getting these kids. Wisconsin, and I remember this from when I coached high school ball in Ohio. Places like Wisconsin, for every one Division I kid out of Ohio, which every year, you're talking 30, 40, major college Division I kids, for every one of those, for every one Wisconsin kid, that's a major D1 prospect. You're getting 3 to 5 kids in Ohio. You're getting probably, 5 to 7 to 8 kids in Florida and so on and so forth. Texas the same way. So, if you want to be elite, you have to recruit nationally. If you're Wisconsin, you've got to get Florida kids to come to Wisconsin, which, now brings in a whole new problem. If I'm a Florida kid and I'm in 80-degree weather all the time, how excited am I to go to Wisconsin?
Yeah.
How excited is anybody to go to Wisconsin?
and I will say this about Wisconsin is Wisconsin has done a good job of getting the kid that maybe he's not he may be a lower echelon Big Ten player, an upper echelon non-power school player coming out of high school, and they've developed those guys where they're juniors and seniors and they're playing really well. But the problem is you can only win so much with those kind of guys. You've got to have the guys that are Big Ten, Power 5 play ready, pretty much coming out of the chute. You can't just depend upon developing guys. And that's what kills Wisconsin is they're going against Ohio State, who played horribly yesterday. But at the same time, you could clearly watch that game and you could see the disparity in talent.
Yeah. If you watch Central Florida's offense, I really don't believe Wisconsin could shut them down.
No, they couldn't handle the speed.
No. Western
There's
Michigan
too much
last
speed
year, the perfect example is Western Michigan last year was mainly a team that was taken from the Midwest, upper Midwest. And Wisconsin could play with them. You put them with a Central Florida, hell, I'd like to see them stop Memphis, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and again, look at Memphis. You look at Memphis's roster; it is primarily Georgia, Florida. Obviously they'll get some kids out of Tennessee. I know Memphis has actually won some in-state recruiting battles with Tennessee because Tennessee football is being down. So they're getting those guys. Very hard to match. Speed kills. And when Ohio State, before Urban Meyer got there, one of the problems with Ohio State is Ohio State was very much a Midwestern recruiting.
That's
when
why
Urban
all the
Meyer
SEC
came in,
schools were beating the hell out of them all the time, Schmidt.
Yeah. So then when Urban Meyer came in, all of a sudden he's bringing kids in from Florida, Texas, California, Georgia. Now all of a sudden you see the difference. You see differences, and I've heard him say before that, they're still not where he wants to be yet. Because you have to have a balance if you're Ohio State between, you don't want to lose your in-state recruiting roads, which, Ohio has some great players, but at the same time, you're starting to see more of the Florida, Georgia, Texas, California kids that are coming to Ohio State. And so now there's a receiver that plays for Wisconsin. It was from Springfield, Ohio. He wasn't even on Ohio State's radar with Urban Meyer because they didn't look at him any better than some of the other receivers they had, which honestly the receivers they have right now are not the greatest. But that's just how the recruiting has changed. And for Wisconsin and those teams, Illinois is another great example. Illinois has to broaden their recruiting.
The thing they're going to run into, too, Brian, is this. I think Minnesota with P.J. Fleck as the head coach is going to only get better. And Nebraska now with Scott Frost, and Nebraska was a program in the 80s that was like that, where they were getting the best players from Nebraska and the surrounding area. But then when Tom Osborne kept coming up short against Miami of Florida in the Orange Bowl, he started to go south. He got players from Florida, he got players from Texas, and then by the early 90s, the mid-90s, they're the best program in college football.
Yeah, and Scott Frost is, he's going to have the inroads not only to Florida, obviously, but, here's a guy that also had inroads to California because of when he was at Oregon. So he's going to get these players. You're going to, Nebraska is going to get good pretty quick, in my opinion. They're going to get good quick. And now, if you're not keeping up with the Joneses or surpassing them, now all of a sudden Wisconsin, instead of being the best on that side of the bracket, now they become third best. So now you're going 7-5, 8-4, and you're firing your head coach, and you're fixing. You think you're fixing the problem, but you're really not, because the problem is your recruiting, which has always been the problem Wisconsin has had. They recruit the same kids, which is going to get you. It's going to get you to the dance, but it's not going to get you any farther than just getting in the door. It's like taking that beautiful girl to prom. She may let you dance with her, but she ain't letting you kiss her.
Yeah, you ain't unsnapping that brawl.
Exactly. So that's really where it's at with Wisconsin and a lot of those schools, and the Big Ten right now. You're going to see Nebraska start to really do. I really do, because I like Scott Frost, and I think Nebraska bringing him there changed the game in the Big Ten. I think it really did change the game a little bit.
Yeah, I expect within a year or two he'll have his kind of players there, and Wisconsin will be run ragged by them instead of having to do it against Ohio State, Michigan State, or Penn State, or Michigan. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Make sure you catch us when we start predicting the bowl games here in a week and a half. I want to thank Brian and Bill, as always. I want to remind everybody, if you're a boxing fan, we got our live boxing show with Michael Montero from Ring Magazine, UNC Network, or UCN Network. Will be on tonight at 9 o'clock with us. Also, if you're boxing fans, somewhere around 10:30, we will have an interview on the Ringside Boxing Show with world welterweight champion Keith One-Time Thurman. So make sure you check that out also. Tomorrow, more boxing. We've got the old-time boxing show where myself and Christopher Shelton will sit down, and we're going to break down the two epic clashes between Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. And then Tuesday night, Brian will be back with me, Matt, and the rest of the gang for the NFL Pick'em Show. So make sure you check out all of our shows on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Brian Schmidt, Bill Searcy, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak. Good night, Aaron.